My name is Olivia Chin, and I learned early that success doesn't always look the way your parents expect it to. Standing outside my childhood home on Christmas Eve, I adjusted my simple black sweater and tried to quiet the voice in my head telling me this was a mistake. 10 years. 10 years since I'd walked away from my family's expectations, their constant criticism, their narrow definition of success. Now here I was back for Christmas dinner, clutching a bottle of wine that cost more than my father's monthly salary, not that they needed to know that. The familiar sound of laughter drifted through the windows, mixed with the clink of glasses and the soft melody of Christmas music. Inside, my parents were hosting their annual Christmas dinner, an event that had always been more about business networking than family celebration. I knocked on the door, my knuckles barely touching the wood before it swung open. My mother stood there, her face a perfect mask of polite disappointment, an expression she'd mastered over the years specifically for me. "Olivia," she said, her voice carrying that familiar note of disapproval. "You're late." I checked my watch. "Actually, I'm 5 minutes early." She ignored my response, turning back to the house. "Everyone's already here. Try not to embarrass us." The living room was exactly as I remembered, tastefully decorated in my mother's preferred neutral tones, with a Christmas tree that looked more like a department store display than a family celebration. The room was filled with familiar faces. Local business owners, my father's colleagues, and of course my successful older brother Michael, who was deep in conversation with someone I didn't recognize. My father spotted me from across the room, his expression darkening slightly. He excused himself from his conversation and made his way over, martini in hand. "So," he said, not bothering with a greeting, "still doing that little online business thing?" I took a slow breath. "It's a digital consulting firm, Dad. And yes, it's going well." He scoffed, taking a sip of his drink. "When are you going to get a real job? Your brother's just been made partner at his firm. He's handling accounts worth millions. What do you have to show for yourself?" Before I could respond, my mother joined us, steering a well-dressed couple in our direction. "Oh, Margaret, John, have you met our daughter?" Her tone carried that subtle note of apology she always used when introducing me. "She's exploring different career options." I felt my face grow hot as Margaret raised her perfectly shaped eyebrows. "Oh, what kind of work do you do, dear?" "I run my own company," I started, but my father cut me off with a laugh. "Look at our useless daughter," he chuckled, the alcohol making him bolder than usual. "Can't even get a real job." My mother joined in with a practiced laugh. "At least Michael is carrying on the family legacy. Sometimes I wonder where we went wrong with Olivia." The room suddenly felt too small, too warm. I'd built Horizon Digital from nothing into a company that was about to close a $50 million deal. But here I was, still that disappointing daughter who couldn't meet their expectations. The doorbell rang, cutting through the humiliation. My mother's eyes widened with excitement. "Oh, that must be James Anderson. He's considering a major contract with your father's firm." As she hurried to the door, I reached for my CO badge in my purse, the one I'd almost left in the car. I'd come straight from our office Christmas party, where I'd given a speech to our 200 employees. The badge with its embossed logo was still clipped to my bag. The front door opened and I heard my mother's overly cheerful greeting. "Mr. Anderson, we're so honored you could join us." Heavy footsteps approached the living room. I turned and time seemed to freeze. James Anderson, the CEO of Anderson Technologies, stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes locked onto my badge, then my face, then back to my badge. "Madame Sue," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "I didn't know these were your parents." I felt a small smile tugging at my lips as I watched my parents' faces drain of color. The badge on my purse caught the light, displaying clearly, "Olivia Chin, CEO, Horizon Digital Industries." The same company that was about to acquire the biggest tech firm in the city. The same company that had just signed a $50 million deal with Anderson Technologies. The same company my parents had dismissed as my little online business thing. My father's martini glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Sometimes karma arrives in the most unexpected moments. And sometimes, it arrives wearing a CEO badge at your family's Christmas dinner. The silence that followed felt eternal. Shards of my father's martini glass glittered on the floor, much like the pieces of their perfectly crafted illusion shattering around us. Mr. Anderson stepped forward, either oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the tension. I must say, Olivia has been absolutely brilliant in handling our recent partnership. The innovation her team brought to the table. He turned to my parents, beaming. You must be incredibly proud. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. My father seemed frozen in place, his face ashen. Michael, my ever-successful brother, had suddenly found great interest in his shoes. My mother started, her voice trembling. Of course we're proud. The lie tasted bitter in the air. Mr. Anderson continued enthusiastically. When she proposed the $50 million digital transformation project, I'll admit I was skeptical. But her presentation was flawless. Speaking of which, he turned to me, I heard rumors about your upcoming acquisition of TechCore Systems. Quite ambitious. I could practically hear my father's neck snap as his head whipped toward me. TechCore Systems was the biggest tech firm in the city, the same one his company had been desperately trying to partner with for years. That's still under wraps, Mr. Anderson, I smiled politely. But I'm sure we'll have some exciting announcements in the new year. My mother, ever the social navigator, quickly tried to regain control. Why don't we all move to the dining room? Dinner's ready to be served. The next hour was excruciating. I sat at my childhood dining table, watching my parents perform the most dramatic transformation I'd ever witnessed. Gone were the snide remarks and disappointed sighs. Instead, they were falling over themselves to highlight their sudden pride in my achievements. Olivia has always been so independent, my mother gushed, conveniently forgetting her earlier comments. Takes after me, really, my father added, as if he hadn't spent years telling me I was wasting my potential. I caught Michael shooting me nervous glances throughout dinner. He'd always been the golden child, the one who followed our parents' carefully planned path. Now he was realizing that path might not have been the only route to success. As dessert was being served, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and had to suppress a smile. It was an email confirming that Horizon Digital had just closed another major deal, this one worth $75 million. Important business? Mr. Anderson asked, noticing my expression. You could say that, I replied, tucking my phone away. Your end is always busy. Oh, speaking of business, Mr. Anderson turned to my father. About that contract we were discussing. My father straightened up eagerly. This was what he'd been waiting for, the reason he'd invited Mr. Anderson to Christmas dinner. I think we'll be going in a different direction, Mr. Anderson said smoothly. After seeing the innovative work Horizon Digital is doing, we're planning to modernize all our systems. In fact, Olivia, I'd love to discuss expanding our current contract. The sound of my father's dreams crashing was almost audible. Later, as guests began to leave, I found myself alone in the kitchen with my mother. She was loading the dishwasher, her movements jerky and tense. Why didn't you tell us? She finally asked, not looking at me. Would it have mattered? I countered. When I started Horizon Digital, you told everyone I was between jobs. When I landed my first major client, you said I was still finding myself. At what point would you have actually listened? She turned to face me, and for the first time I saw something new in her eyes, fear. Fear that she'd been wrong all along. Fear that she'd backed the wrong child. Fear that all her carefully laid plans and social maneuvering had been for nothing. We just wanted what was best for you, she whispered. No, I replied firmly. You wanted what looked best to others. I grabbed my purse from the counter, the CEO badge catching the light once more. I should go. I have an early meeting tomorrow. With TechCore. My father's voice came from the doorway. He looked older somehow, deflated. Among others. I moved past him but stopped at the threshold. You know what's ironic? All I ever wanted was for you to believe in me. Now that everyone else does, it doesn't matter if you do or not. The drive home was quiet, but my phone kept buzzing with notifications. First came a text from Michael. I had no idea. Can we talk? Then an email from my mother. Darling, I know we've made mistakes. Please give us a chance to make it right. Finally, a message from my father. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I pulled into my garage, the same one they'd mocked me for buying in an unfashionable neighborhood. Now it housed my Mercedes alongside my first car, the beaten-up Honda I'd lived in for 3 months while bootstrapping my company. Inside my home office, I opened my laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Remember Why. Inside was a collection of emails, text messages, and photos, years of dismissive comments, missed celebrations, and thinly veiled insults from my family. I added a new entry. Look at our useless daughter. Can't even get a real job. Below it, I added today's date and a note. The day they finally saw me. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my father. About the TechCore acquisition. Maybe we could discuss a potential partnership? I closed the folder without replying. Tomorrow, I would announce Horizon Digital's acquisition of TechCore Systems. Tomorrow, I would sign contracts worth more than my father's company's entire annual revenue. Tomorrow, I would continue building something that was entirely mine. But tonight, I sat in my quiet office looking at my reflection in the window. The useless daughter who had built an empire. The disappointment who had become a CEO. The failure who had succeeded on her own terms. I thought about the badge that had caused such chaos. It wasn't just a piece of plastic with my name and title. It was proof that success doesn't always look the way others expect it to. Sometimes it looks like a daughter who stopped trying to meet her parents' expectations and exceeded them anyway. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Ms. Grant, your 8 a.m. tomorrow is confirmed. The TechCore board is ready to sign. Thank you, Sarah, I replied, then added, send flowers to my parents' house tomorrow. The card should read, thank you for teaching me that the best revenge is massive success. I closed my laptop and walked to the window looking out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably still sitting in their kitchen, realizing that their useless daughter now held the key to their business future. Sometimes the best Christmas gifts aren't the ones wrapped under the tree. Sometimes they're moments of clarity that no amount of money can buy. And sometimes, they're the priceless expression on your parents' faces when they realize their biggest mistake was underestimating their own daughter. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new acquisitions, new opportunities. But tonight I had given myself the best gift of all. I had finally stopped seeking their approval and shown them why I never needed it in the first place.